Today on the FF Perspective, we'll be talking about the impact of the NFL Combine on the 2023 rookie class, as well as some big quarterback dominoes, some of which that have fallen, some that have not. I'm your host, Chu, and follow me on Twitter at Father Dynasty, and check out my YouTube channel, Father Dynasty, for more interviews and fantasy football content just like this. So without further ado, let's get some perspective. Welcome to the FF Perspective, your fantasy football group chat, only slightly more appropriate. With the NFL Combine in our rear view and free agency here in but a week's time, let's get some perspective. And to do so, I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, my fearless commissioner, Tyler Daly, and my partner in trades, Jacob Ridgway. Fellas, how are we doing?
I'll start. Jake's chucking up the deuces right now. I'm doing great. Yeah, I was checking on my Hokies, see how we're doing in March Madness. We're down to the final few games, maybe game of the year, but this is outside of the start of football season. This is my favorite time of year. We've got draft season coming up and March Madness right around the corner. So excited to talk about some prospects.
Oh, yeah. Jake, what do you got?
It's a big night in our household. As Tyler mentioned, the Hokies are playing the ACC tournament first round, and then Catherine Elizabeth Feeney's Wilmington Seahawks are playing in the Colonial Athletic Association final tonight against the College of Charleston. It would be a big upset if they were to pull this off. They're up by 3 at the half.
Hey-o.
A big night indeed. Well, let's make it even bigger, and let's dive into some talk on the Combine and the free agency frenzy that is about to start. So first off, we've got a question regarding the Combine. So Tyler, first, start with you. Does an upcoming rookie skipping activities at the Combine change your perspective on him in Dynasty?
Yeah, probably a little bit of a cop-out here. It's a piece of the puzzle for me, but it's not the whole pie, to sound cliche. I mean, it's just what I thought of when you posed this question was just that it may make me consider a player at another position potentially, as opposed to, like, let's say I'm considering XYZ wide receiver. Maybe I look at a running back or a quarterback or something there, because I think the immediate example, like you referenced with this being kind of like our group chat, is us talking about what we felt was strange about Jackson Smith-Njigba not running the 40. And sometimes you get this, me personally, I get this feeling like, what are you hiding? But it's also like someone who's on the defense in a trial, not wanting to take the stand. It doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty, but kind of makes you wonder. So it doesn't totally scare me off of a player, but it's something that I think just rounds. It's still important to round into your perspective, because I think, if you're confident in your abilities, I think you're going to go out there and just test. I mean, we saw that, I think, with a couple quarterbacks that threw this year that we weren't necessarily expecting to, because that's been the trend so much so in recent years. So part of it, but I'm not going to just wipe somebody off my board because they either run a bad 40 or don't run the 40 or run a great one.
Yeah, I think that would be quite a blemish on them if they solely did not run the 40 and they were taken off your board or bumped down significantly. They must have had some pretty atrocious film or some questionable film if that was the deciding factor. But Jake, same question.
Yeah, as Tyler mentioned, you don't want to incriminate yourself. So I think we saw Sean Tucker, Dwayne McBride, and several others. Bryce Young didn't throw, but a lot of these guys did not participate in some form of the Combine, if not all of the workouts / drills. So it doesn't impact my thoughts on a player whatsoever, because we've seen them play football, which is the whole purpose of the NFL draft. The Combine is like, it's icing on the cake, I guess, if you're really looking for something, or if you want to see a specific trait. But my goodness, like, let's be realistic. It's championship. I mean, you have Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was the best route runner at the Combine, but he didn't run the 40-yard dash. And then you have Bryce Young, who could be the number one, is probably the favorite at this point to be the number one overall pick. And he's not throwing at the NFL Combine. Why is he not throwing? It's posturing. He doesn't want to go there. And he's 5'10" and a half. So he doesn't want to go there against 6'2" CJ Stroud, 6'4" Will Levis, the behemoth that is Anthony Richardson. And these guys are throwing 60-yard bombs on air, and it's obviously gorgeous. If you're a football fan, like, you ooze over that kind of stuff. But Bryce Young is not going to go there and throw a 25-yard out and people go ooh and ah. They want to see the bombs, chicks dig the long ball type stuff. So it's just posturing. You're only going to go there and work out if you're an all-star in some aspect. So it doesn't really impact my thought process on dynasty drafts or rookies moving forward in redrafts.
I couldn't have said it better than both of you guys, and I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like over the years, back when the combine was somewhat of a newer thing, it was, there was maybe a bit of mystery around it, and everyone did everything at least that you physically could possibly do. And I feel like now, even like as some of the players are ending their college careers, they're even ending their college careers in a way that's already looking ahead to the NFL, let alone the combine and pro days. So I think they kind of trust, if they're getting their agents and they're getting a sense of maybe what their draft capital is going to be, they understand that, if I'm going there, I'm doing interviews and that kind of thing, that might be more telling of these coaches and GMs getting a sense of who I am as a player versus me going out there and running real fast in a straight line or jumping up really high. But Jake, speaking of the icing on the cake, and by far this is my favorite question of the night, knowing their profiles, what is more appealing to you as a dynasty manager? So first, Anthony Richardson running a 4.43 40-yard dash at 6'4", 244 pounds, or CJ Stroud having, as Daniel Jeremiah would say it, one of the best throwing sessions he's seen at the combine.
Is neither an option or not available? I mean,
absolutely.
Look, I think you get enamored, and we as collectively as a fantasy football community are enamored by the combine when you see an athlete throw. And obviously it's beginning to become rare that a quarterback would throw at the combine because you're not sleeping a lot and your receivers aren't there. You don't know these guys. You don't know the routes. You don't know where they're going to cut off a dig route or a comeback route. And so, like, the analysts say that it's a difficult task, or it's a difficult sell to throw at the combine, and all these guys stepped up to say they would do it. So, I mean, good for CJ. I would hope that he's going to look good on air if he's a first-round draft pick. So, that's not a knock on him. Like, good on him. He should look good. But at the same time, I guess if I had to pick, it would be Anthony Richardson because, what was that in the top 2% of quarterbacks that have run the 40-yard dash? So that's pretty special. But, you go back to watching some of his games at Florida when he started for 1 year and, he's missing, 8-yard outs, 8 yards high, that scares the crap out of me. I don't know if it would be I would want to see another year. And since he's not giving me another year, I have a lot of hesitancy to make that pick. But in this particular scenario, I would take Anthony Richardson.
Fair enough. Tyler, what are you thinking?
Well, my answer is gonna cut the other way, so we're gonna go a little first take here. But I think while Jacob was talking, I'm thinking about really something I should have thought about in preparing for this, and that I think really what the combine is serving is like confirmation bias, and we have our ideas of who we like going in, and it's kind of like we joked about the other night. We get a little about Devon A-Chain and Jahmyr Gibbs and whatnot. we may get into a little bit more of that later, but it's just, guys seek out the narratives, and we all do that as human beings. We seek out the narratives that we want to see played out. And so me personally, having watched Anthony Richardson a decent amount this year, I don't necessarily, I'm not super high on his arm talent, as a lot of people aren't, but the guy's a freakish athlete. So he run, if you're into him and he runs a, what was it, a 4.43 or whatever you said at the combine, then like you just went from 6 to midnight. But, if for me personally, somebody who I'm a little bit higher on, I actually would love to try to find a line on, from a certain betting outlet that I may or may not be involved in on CJ Stroud going first overall, because I truly believe that as we go through this draft process, that he's more of a prototypical what NFL guys are looking for. So I got a little bit more jazzed up to answer your question about Daniel Jeremiah talking about his throwing session, because I like CJ Stroud more than Anthony Richardson. So that feeds that hunger for me. So it's just kind of however you want to slice that, but I got a little bit more of a stiffy for CJ.
True. If you don't mind, really quickly, Tyler, do you have any concerns with him being a system quarterback? You look at Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. You have JT Barrett, Justin Fields. I mean, I'm blanking on anybody else, but does that concern you? I'm not saying that it should. I'm just curious if it does.
No, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think the only thing that's really like counteracting that for me a little bit is just the amount of draft capital that's going to get invested into him. And, you know, that doesn't throw away his ill will, or his poorer traits, but it just means to me that someone's going to probably invest a heck of a lot in him. So he's going to be given every opportunity to succeed, which for most quarterbacks that are going to go inside the top 10 is going to mean at least probably 2 years of solid playing time. And, you know, once you get outside of probably the top 3, top 4, you know, quarterbacks, it's a total dice roll beyond that. But yeah, absolutely. Why am I blanking on his last name? But the other one you didn't mention that I was waiting for you to say was Troy Smith from Ohio State as well. Another, did I get that last name right?
Yeah, Heisman winner.
Yeah. So we'll see where Justin Fields goes, but yeah, the NFL is littered with washed up Ohio State quarterbacks. So we'll see what that means for Mr. Stroud.
Yeah, and I think a big piece, not maybe just specifically with those Ohio State quarterbacks, but you know,
Cardale Jones, another one.
Oh yeah,
shotgun.
Yep. But I mean, a big piece of I feel like is what are they coming into? So if it's an incredible system that they have, and Brian Hartline just pumping out unbelievable receivers left and right at Ohio State, can they come in and do they have a stable offensive line? Do they have a quarterback or a coach, an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach who is going to kind of work with them and help them, you know, bring in some some things they already know and help them grow within the offense? Do they get to sit a year like a Patrick Mahomes or that sort of thing? So maybe whether it's Ohio State or not, whether it's, you know, the draft capital or that kind of thing, as long as they get the opportunity to thrive. I can think of plenty of first-round quarterbacks. You look at Zach Wilson, you look at Josh Rosen, plenty of quarterbacks who, you know, they get that first-round draft capital, and it just all goes to shit, for lack of a better word. And there's plenty of other more talented ones that, of course, get that opportunity and grow with it. And very excited to see where both of those guys go. And next up, last thing related to the combine and the rookies. What is your favorite non-quarterback fantasy relevant position group with this rookie class? And Tyler, let's go first on this one.
So running backs for me. And I mentioned this before Jacob joined us pre-show, is that I'm not super high on the wide receivers in this class. Tight ends is a close second for me, but running backs, I think it has me most excited because we have the top end guy in Bijan Robinson. And then after that, I think we have a lot of guys that have big time pros and cons that could fill in potentially 3 down roles. Like, you know, we see big bodies like Zach Charbonnet that have shown the acumen to catch passes out of the backfield. We see slightly smaller guys, you know, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, you know, Zach Evans, even from Mississippi, from Ole Miss. Hopefully my wife didn't hear that from the other room. But there's just a lot of potential there where guys have question marks. But I think there's going to be just this glut of running backs taken probably between rounds 2 and 4, where they're going to be given chances, whether it's, you know, 30, 40% of the workload in their first year. And that's really all we're looking for at the end of the day at running back is opportunity. So I think this class, while it maybe doesn't have, you know, any elite talents outside of Bijan, it has a lot of guys that maybe have that ceiling in them.
Jake, what do you got for your favorite non-quarterback fantasy relevant position group out of this rookie class?
I will take tight end. I agree with everything Tyler had to say about the running back class. I mean, it's as deep as I can remember in Dynasty rookie drafts. But in terms of the tight ends, the three of us talked about this a few weeks ago. What is there, 10 tight ends that have been drafted in the first round over the last 10 or 12 years? And, you know, how many of those were fantasy relevant? That's another conversation. But I say that because you look at Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, you look at Dalton Kincaid, Utah by way of University of San Diego, FCS school. And then you have, let's see, I'm missing two others. Let's see, where am I going?
Darnell Washington.
Thank you, from Georgia. And then there's one other. Luke Musgrave, grandson of Bill Curry at Oregon State. All of those guys I've seen in a mock somewhere that could go around. And probably in the first 63 picks, since that it's not 64 picks in the first two rounds, compliments of the Miami Dolphins. But that's really exciting, because if you're telling me that we could have 3 or 4 tight ends drafted in the first 50 or so NFL picks, that's pretty special. I mean, I think that's telling of where the strength is of this class. So if there is opportunity in a dynasty rookie draft to get your hands on one of these running backs in the middle or late second round, it's hard not to take that chance, because some of these guys, and we know that tight end is probably, it could be one of the hardest positions in all of football to learn, because it usually takes 2 to 3 years to really hone the skill set from a blocking and a receiving perspective. So, I think I'm really excited to hear that you've got 3 or 4 prospects that could go in as high as the first round, depending on who you ask. It could be Washington from Georgia, or Musgrave based on traits. Mayer from Notre Dame is the best all-around tight end. The best receiving tight end threat is Kincaid. So, I mean, there's just a lot to offer with this tight end class, and not to mention your boy Chew from Iowa, Sam Laporta. So
Laporta.
And I'm missing another handful of guys that probably could go on day 2, which is very telling about this class. And you, of all people, know the tight end class this year better than anybody else. But I think that top tier is just so much deeper than it usually is. One guy that you've got your eye on in the first 2 rounds of a dynasty rookie draft, super flex or not. And this year, you could argue there are 4 easy targets at least.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting jumping from what it was last year, at least looking at how far the quarterbacks fell, and then that kind of changed the board for everybody in terms of, even in Superflex, who's really going to spend a first-round pick on a quarterback, even if you need one, as a Kenny Pickett, what have you. But, yeah, looking at the depth of both the running backs and the tight ends, I think is incredibly exciting. And, 2 positions, almost the polar opposite. A running back, you're going to want them to produce on that first contract because you have a little to no confidence that you'd want to comfortably pay them for that second contract. And the tight end being something where, you may have to scheme them, especially if they're a pass catching specialist, scheme them to where they can just get the ball, maybe like an Isaiah Likely, how, an unbelievable talent out of college, but we weren't sure how that was going to translate. And he went to the tight end factory in Baltimore and got plenty of opportunities behind Mark Andrews. So, yeah, I'm definitely with you on both of those. And, yeah, I mean, with looking back at the tight end classes over the last couple of years, you got McBride last year, Pitts and Pat Freiermuth the year before, Kmet before that, Hawkinson, Fant, Irv Smith, and Drew Sample. I completely forgot that Drew Sample got drafted in the first 2 rounds. And before that was Hayden Hurst, Mike Gesicki, and Dallas Goedert, which is a very, very solid draft there. So if we're looking at a couple of these guys who could be first and, I mean, even second round draft picks is pretty incredible, especially given I saw some landing spots being the Packers, the Chargers, the Bengals. Again, all teams that are very strong offenses and that are also in need of a tight end. So I think that could benefit greatly from any one of these guys going there. But we're leaving that behind, and we're going to jump forward a little bit to the free agency that is about a week away, even though it's basically started now. And the first question I've got, Jake, we'll start off with you, is who is more likely to be wearing a different jersey in 2023, Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson? And this, as of this recording, this is Tag Tuesday. So we do have Lamar Jackson, who did receive the non-exclusive franchise tag today, and then Aaron Rodgers is allegedly able to meet with the Jets and possibly other teams. So, Jake, what do you got here?
I think I saw an interview, or at least a snippet of an interview with Arthur Blank, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, where he said that the Atlanta Falcons were not pursuing Lamar Jackson. So I don't know where else Lamar Jackson would go if it's not Baltimore. He's a match made in heaven for Coach Harbaugh there. The offense is schemed around him. I do believe that they'll figure it out. I know like they've structured the tag in a way where he could potentially leave for an exorbitant amount of money. I just don't see him leaving. So I guess if I had to pick, it would be Aaron Rodgers. He's just such a diva, man. And the dude's going to be 40 in December. He's just like Brett Favre before him. And I saw this week that he said, if you think I'm a diva, just tune me out. And, I try to tune his fault that the media covers it left and right. Totally not his fault. And I'm not necessarily saying that he's a diva, but, I just don't understand how you go into every offseason not knowing whether you want to play football. And granted, I haven't played football since high school. And after my junior year of high school, I was very clearly realizing I was never going to play football again at that size. And so I didn't even finish high school football. But I just don't understand, you either want to play or you don't, And so he's getting paid $55 million this year, Chew. So, look, I do think if he plays football, it's going to be as a Green Bay Packer. New York Jets want to throw, a couple of first-round picks at the Packers. Good on you. My best to you. So I would say it would be Aaron Rodgers, but I do believe he'll be a Green Bay Packer again for one more year.
Absolutely. And Tyler, you share the same sentiment or something a little different?
Yeah. So prior to finding that same piece of information that Jacob referenced, I actually wrote down that I thought that both of them were going to be on different teams, but I was banking on Lamar being a Falcon in all honesty, just because I felt like he fits that franchise. They're kind of looking for that next young piece to guide them into the next era. I know, Chu, you particularly don't believe that it's going to be Desmond Ridder, because I know you weren't a fan of him when we talked about him last year.
Not so much.
But, gosh, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, like Jacob touched on, that guy's so high as soon as the season ends that, he doesn't know. He's going in dark caves. He's doing peyote or whatever weird drugs. I mean, he's talking about seeing dark men in the corner of the room that, follow him around also. This guy is just like, brother nature. I think I'm gonna, so with that, if the Falcons are going to respectfully no, hold on, we got to keep this together here. All right, we're back. Okay. All right, hold on.
I had to mute myself.
It's not helping though. So if I had to pick one, it's going to be Rodgers at this point, because I think the Jets are they're just, to me, it reminds me of the Cleveland Browns in that they're just so QB starved and thirsty that they're just stupid enough to throw the kitchen sink at like a 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers, because, it's been so long since, we were talking about, quarterbacks and stuff in our group chat. And I think that's probably the last time the Jets have been to an AFC championship game is when Dirty Mark Sanchez, took them back in the day. So they're just, I think they have the defense, and now they have a couple offensive pieces. They get Breece Hall back, hopefully, back in stride next season. And then with Garrett Wilson and some of those other weapons they have on offense, I think they're, like we also talked about with the Rams, and mortgage it now and banners hang forever. So if they believe that they can get Aaron Rodgers, I really think they're going to go out and get him. I saw something, I don't know how credible it was, but that apparently they're meeting in California this week as of today, Tuesday, March the 7th. So I'm saying Rodgers is more likely, and I do think he's going to end up being a New York Jet because they're just desperate enough.
Yeah, we're in lockstep on that one. And yeah, in terms of the teams, because I'd seen something almost immediately after hearing that the tag was being applied to Lamar, because even before that happened, it got out that was the thought process was, we're doing the unrestricted tag because that allows you to talk with other teams, and obviously the Ravens' mindset being, well, worst case, we're outbid and someone in their mind overpays you. We get 2 first-round picks. We'll figure it out. And if anything, then they get to say, I told you so, if they get to match whatever offer someone gives them, and they get him for what I guess theoretically the market value would be. But I saw a couple of other teams too. So the Falcons, the Panthers, the Raiders, and the Commanders all apparently came out and in some form or fashion were stating their, I guess, lack of interest in even pursuing Lamar Jackson, which I find that pretty weird, because I know it's a unique situation, but whenever there's, a star quarterback, specifically quarterback, let alone another important position that comes available, it's weird that within like an hour or two, you have teams letting people know, I guess without even being asked, well, no, we're not even going to pursue this. Like that seems a bit odd. I'm wondering why that is even the case. Even if you do already have a plan, all those teams I would assume do. But it's interesting that wouldn't kick the tires on maybe some discussions, but maybe that does say a lot about maybe it's an ownership thing in terms of owners knowing one another and kind of not wanting to step on toes. I'm not too sure, but that is funny that regarding Aaron Rodgers, that this is just following the Brett Favre path, and in I guess a year or two's time he'll be in Minnesota after Kirk Cousins takes guaranteed money elsewhere. I don't know. But
if Chew, and to that point, if I can interject where my opinion was not asked for real quick, I throw skepticism on all that stuff when these teams jump in and say that they're not interested. Mm-hmm. And I realize this may seem a little bit two-faced since I just referenced, the weight that I took to the Falcons report of them not pursuing him. But I think to a degree, all of that is posturing. Like, it's kind of just like when you were flirting with a girl in high school or something like that, and you try to act like, you're not that interested so that she gets more interested. And it's just like, hey, if I come out and I say, if I'm the Carolina Panthers and I say, hell yeah, we're going after Lamar Jackson, like price just went up, buddy. So, and I don't know what the restrictions are around, or if there are any, about how quickly you have to give up those 2 first rounders or something. But, gosh, as a Charlotte resident currently, I would be stoked as hell if we went out and got Lamar Jackson. Like, David Tepper, I know you're listening. Go out and get it done. Like, we need some excitement in this city around that franchise. So, and it ain't coming from Will Levis, let me tell you.
Teppy, you heard it here first, and I swear to God, if you pick Levis, I will be. I'm a couple hours away from you. I will be in an uproar at my house 2 hours away. Just letting you know.
Jacob will meet you there.
Oh man, well, capping this inaugural episode of the FF Perspective off with another free agent quarterback, or should I say New York Giant for the next 4 years, in Daniel Jones. So we'll start it off with Jake. Is Daniel Jones's 4-year, $160 million, so $40 million a year deal, I think $82 million guaranteed at signing? Do you think that's the right move for the Giants as a whole?
Let me ask you this: what did Derek Carr get today from the Saints?
Was it 150? I think
for 4 years,
so just under. Yeah, just under.
Okay, I say that because I think Dak Prescott 2 years ago. I mean, I am a biased Cowboys fan. I think Dak Prescott got a $160 million deal 2 years ago, 4-year deal, 120-ish guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And I mean, anybody who watched the Cowboys against the 49ers in the playoffs, Dak Prescott was one of the 49ers MVPs. And I'm a Cowboys fan. And that's not saying that Dak Prescott isn't a starting quarterback in the National Football League. It's to say it's really hard to play quarterback in the National Football League. So you saw what Daniel Jones could be with a new coach, a coach that was the offensive coordinator for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, and you saw how special that offense could be with him. So I think, yes, I do think that he's worth it because, you better, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's green where you water it. So, what you have now better be worse than what you're getting. And to me, if they don't re-sign Daniel Jones or they franchise tag him, regardless of what they do you know for a fact that what you could get in the draft or what you could get on the free agent market is better than Daniel Jones? From what I saw last year and some, iterations with a not so great coaching staff prior to that, I would say with McAdoo and company earlier on, I would say that I saw enough promise that I would want it back. I really do believe that. And is that a steep price to pay? Yes. Do I think that the quarterback market is absurdly, overpriced at this point? Yes. Do I think that Patrick Mahomes deserved $550 million, $45 million plus guaranteed, at least for the next 10 years? I would say no, he's not. I would say you could argue he's underpaid. He's already won 2 Super Bowls. So, there's just, winning means everything to these franchises, and they'll do anything to do it. So, it seems to start at quarterback. The only poop-tastic quarterbacks I can think of that have won Super Bowls are Trent Dilfer, Joe Flacco.
Rex Grossman.
But he didn't win. He played in it. He played in it. You're absolutely right. He played in it. But other than that, I feel like there have been a lot of strong quarterbacks that play in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, Jimmy G didn't win. So you got to be. You can't be good. You got to be great. So if he's going to get paid like this, he's got to be great. And what I saw last year, he can be strong, especially if he gets a strong receiver like Jackson Smith and Jigba in there.
Absolutely, Tyler. What do you got for Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with Jacob here. I mean, dance with the one who brung you. I mean, and I don't mean that in the way that Daniel Jones has brought them a lot of places, but God bless Tyrod Taylor, his backup, but we know what he is at this point. And so you're not handing him the keys to the franchise. He's on the back third or, like hole 17 or 18 probably of his career with the punctured lung and what have you. Thank you, Chargers organization. But, gosh, like Jacob said, Brian Daboll coming in, injecting some energy into that offense. And I mean, just look at the talent that, or lack thereof, that he had. Yeah. He's throwing to guys like Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James, like people who legitimately would not make other rosters in the NFL. And Daboll and Daniel Jones, to whatever extent you want to, divide up that credit, made that a competitive franchise this year. And so, they're sitting at pick 25 this year. Not to mention what they gave up. I think at the time, if memory calls correctly, they traded up a couple spots to go get Daniel Jones in the first round a couple years ago. So you're at this just inflection point where what are you going to do? You're going to let Daniel Jones walk and try to find something on the free agent market, like, that's either equal to or worse than him, or you're going to let him walk and you're going to have to mortgage more of your future to try to hit on the next guy. And the NFC is just totally wide open right now in terms of quarterbacks. Like all the quarterback competition in the playoffs is on the AFC side. So if you're just average to above average, like you can make NFC championship games. You can give yourself a chance to get into the Super Bowl because you're not having to play Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and the like Joe Burrow for years to come. So, sure, you got Jalen Hurts in your own division, but I mean, they were competitive this year. What did they finish? Like, I think 9-7 or something like that, or 9-8, that we play 17. So I'm here for it. Danny Dimes, let's go.
Yeah. It may feel like a tough pill to swallow, because I know when they made that pick of Daniel Jones, I would say was not widely appreciated. I would say either by the Giants fan base or most people were, even outside the Giants fan base, were pretty surprised as to why that was the case. And with how he had played up until prior to this past season, a lot of it was injury, but there was a weird fumbling issue that hung around. Also a lot of inconsistency around him in terms of weapons and coaching and that sort of thing. So can't put it fully on his back, but as of for 2023, and this should account for all the deals done thus far, the top 5 annual salaries for quarterbacks, you have Aaron Rodgers at $50.3 million, Russell Wilson at $48.5, Kyler Murray at $46.1, Deshaun Watson at $46, and Patrick Mahomes at $45. I understand there's a bit of cap gymnastics and guaranteed money here and there that goes into it, but if you're looking at front-loading some guaranteed money for Daniel Jones, it's a 4-year deal. More will come out, but I'm sure it'll end up being something where they probably have an out after the second, maybe third year. I think that's a huge boon for Jones to get another opportunity to really prove himself and show that he can actually thrive in this Daboll-led offense. But also, this gives them more of an opportunity, so they're able to tag Saquon at $10.1 million, keeps another weapon there, and technically the backup quarterback with how last season went, and also gives them more opportunity to rebuild the defense, maybe get another weapon or two on offense for Daniel Jones. So overall, it's a weird situation, with this offseason, seeing guys like Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, and Derek Carr get the contracts that they did. But, the market is who is unrestricted free agents. I mean, I know back when Matt Stafford got his deal and some of these other guys, it's not like they were the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but they were the best quarterbacks that were unrestricted free agents, and that just is what it is.
Yep.
But, well, fellas, I sincerely appreciate it. I know that we covered that the combine results don't really matter. Aaron Rodgers is a bit of a diva, and he's good as gone. And Daniel Jones is worth it. But fellas, each of you, get a takeaway. And Tyler, what would be your takeaway?
My takeaway, from the combine in general.
Anything you got? Take away from the episode. Take away from the rookies. Take away from free agency thus far.
Yeah, I think. Gosh, I should have come prepared with a better thought. Jacob, you got anything? I gotta think for a second.
Yeah, I would go ahead and say that Devin Achane is the number 2 running back in this class.
That's a spicy takeaway.
Yeah, yes. No, all jokes aside, Chew. I think the major takeaway here is, how much are you drinking the Anthony Richardson Kool-Aid here? What does the NFL Combine mean to you in terms of his performance? I understand it was an electrifying performance, and there was an ESPN draft analyst, Matt Miller, maybe his name, who said that Anthony Richardson made himself millions over this past weekend. And then you had somebody else, I think from Pro Football Focus, who said, look, you expected him to put on a show, and he did. This doesn't change his draft value. He's still going to go, be a top 5 pick. Now, could you have said he was going to be a top 10 pick prior to, and now he's going to be a top 5? Sure, but you still know who he is as a football player in terms of what he could bring to the table. So I think my biggest takeaway here is that, I liked his 40-yard dash. I thought that was pretty special. Tyler said, I'll take CJ Stroud's performance. And I think it just goes to show you the jury is very much out on him. And you either love him or he's not really, he's QB, call it 5 on your draft board. I think that he's just a very polarizing prospect. And I think, I took from this podcast that we are in lockstep with the NFL in terms of how we feel about him. Because I think you'll find a lot of people also who just drink the Kool-Aid.
I've got it.
You already know I'm flush with the Kool-Aid, big guy.
My takeaway is go get from our discussion and kind of thinking about how this year's draft is going to shake up from a dynasty perspective is go get 2nd round picks, in my opinion, because we're going to have 4 quarterbacks unequivocally get taken in the 1st round. And so that's going to clog up 4 picks. We've also got, like Jacob referenced, we've got a loaded tight end class, and we've got a bunch of running backs and wide receivers that we like in certain elements, but I don't know are going to necessarily warrant 1st round picks because, you look at even our mock draft that we did, I think we ended up with 2 wide receivers in the 1st round, but you could easily see that just being Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Jordan Addison maybe falls to the 2nd because somebody jumps up to take a running back they like or a tight end that they like. So we touched on this before. We don't want to lean too much on the crutch of let's see where the draft capital goes and then we'll follow their lead. Obviously, that's a big piece of information that we need and we don't have right now. But I think there's just going to be a ton of value in the 2nd round in dynasty drafts in this upcoming year because last year we did not have we had a void of we were desperate for quarterback value and we just didn't have it. So this year it's almost like subconsciously or without choice, we're going to be reaching a little bit further, and there's guys in particular we've discussed in our league that are desperate for quarterback help. So there's definitely going to be 4 spots taken up at least in the 1st round of dynasty drafts with quarterbacks. So grab up those 2nd round picks and take some flyers on some of these guys that you like.
Well, you heard it here first, and if it wasn't first, you heard it here best. Well, fellas, I appreciate your perspective, and we'll look forward to the next one.